Hey everyone, Ryan Badgley from the Barfly Tailgate Show, and football season is kicking off, and I know you feel like I do, so to steal a phrase from WWE superstar Daniel Bryan, yes, yes, yes! And I also know you are like me and you love the work Allen Robinson is putting out on the football field, but also off the field. That's why we're so pleased to partner with the Allen Robinson Within Reach Foundation. Their work provides educational opportunities and resources to low-income and inner-city Chicago students to help put success within reach. How can you help? Immediately you can visit allenrobinson12.org and learn more about what they are doing and make a donation. If you can't donate money, can you donate your time? The foundation is always looking for volunteers. And please let others know about their great work. In the coming weeks, the Barroom Network will hold some fundraising efforts, and we hope that you'll be a part of those. And again, let your family and friends know. Now, how about them Chicago Bears? I'm so psyched up for this season. I think A-Rob has 100 catches and double-digit touchdowns. Now let's bear down.
There's a mint condition Topps Walter Payton rookie trading card selling on eBay for $59,500. A 1984-85 Michael Jordan rookie Fleer trading card sold in 2016 for $40,000. Today, it's said to be twice that amount. A little out of your league? How about a signed Ron Santo baseball that only cost you a little over $1,100? It's just stuff. I mean, stuff valued at more than you could have ever imagined you would own as a kid. For many of you, it's stuff your mom threw out.
And welcome into another edition of Stuff Your Mom Threw Out, also known as Open Mic Night at the Comedy Store. I'm David Schuster.
Wait, who's funny here?
Well, you are looking. I'm David Schuster, and he is the owner and operator of AU Sports, who brings us this fine podcast, and they're located at 6006 Dempster in Morton Grove. I'm David Schuster, and he is Mr. Hollywood himself, Scott Beatty. Hello, Mr. Hollywood.
Yeah, I'm helping out with this amateur hour. Along with David. David's the leader in that department, though. I mean, if you're looking for a true amateur, David Schuster's your man.
All right. Okay, then. Can you come up with a little bit something funnier than that?
Nope.
No, I know that. I knew that immediately. By the way, later on in this podcast, we're going to hear from a good friend of both of ours, and I've known Steve Grad for a long, long time. He works for Beckett Authentication Services. He works in a professional capacity with you, authenticating a lot of stuff. I've known Steve. He actually worked for the Mancow Muller Show way back in the day.
Amen, brother. Amen.
We'll get some stories, I'm sure, about that. And he was also an incredible autograph hound once upon a time, but he has really moved up in the world, if you will.
Let's point out he is the man at Beckett as far as authentication services go, and also he is the go-to sports expert for Pawn Stars.
Oh, it's so funny that you mentioned that, because right off the bat, I'm going to get into this. And who was the one who brought it up first today? Not me, but you.
I didn't say anything about porn.
You just did twice
damn
now.
I lost.
No?
That's Pawn.
Pawn Stars.
Pawn? I'm sorry.
Aldo, we've got a new record. 1 minute and 8 seconds into the show.
Well, I thought
the man's mind is already wandering.
I thought you said porn. You said pawn.
Well, of course you did. Somebody asked you if you want corn on the cob. You hear porn.
Porn on the cob.
You eat them both. What can I tell you? Hey, you know what? Of course I did my research on this last night. There is something called the World Exotic Art Museum. It's in Miami. Did you know this?
No, because
it's the next time I go to Miami, I'm not just going to go to the Orange Bowl.
I'm going to take the virtual online tour.
You can do that too, by the way, because I did last night.
Located on Washington Avenue and 12th Street, the World Erotic Art Museum is not your typical art institution. The small entrance lobby leads to an amazing large display upstairs. Founded by Naomi Wilczek in 2005, every piece in the museum stems from her personal collection. With over 4,000 paintings, sculptures, tapestries, and art objects depicting erotica from all over the globe, the World Erotic Art Museum will satisfy the more exotic side of your curiosity. And with admission being only $15, the World Erotic Art Museum is a fun way to explore the sexual and sensuous secrets of art.
So anyway, of course, I had to do a little bit of research to see how much some of these cards are worth. All right. How much do you think?
You need to stop staying up until 2 in the morning.
What else is there to do at 2 in the morning? We'll get the sports memorabilia, trust me, a little bit, I'm sure with Steve and everybody else. All right, a Seika card, and I got a story about Seika, by the way. A Seika signed card, how much?
Well, why don't you explain to people who Seika is?
Well, she was a porn star.
Who's not a pervert like you.
She was a porn star, a famous one. I'm only going to tell you about the famous ones.
She's from Chicago.
Hi, my name is Seika. I have just completed a new motion picture called Inside Seika. Inside Seika is my story of everything that I know and have learned about sex.
A Seika signed card. I don't know. I think from the stories I would hear when I was a kid that she was reasonably friendly to fans. So I'm going to say
very friendly.
I'm going to say $250.
No, this time you're going way overboard.
Am I?
Yeah.
Well, see, that's
usually you're underboard.
I was trying to be conservative because I know she was friendly. So how much? $50?
$85.
Okay.
$85. All right, the story with Seika. She was, this is early in my career covering games last week. She would be at the ballpark because she knew Billy Connors, the Cubs pitching coach. I think they were an item. I could be wrong about that, but she was always, associated with him. So she would show up at the ballpark in the 6th or 7th inning and then disappear. And we always wondered, where are you going? What are you doing? These are the days when there weren't that many fans at the ballpark either, by the way.
Wait, they just pulled Leon Durham out of the game. What's going on?
And then he came up in the 9th inning and he was re-energized. So, we saw Seika all the time at the ballpark. That was just sort of weird. All right, how much is and I saw this one on stage, Kitten Navidad. You know who she is, don't you?
I kind of do. This is
a Hall of Famer.
West Myers, beneath the valley of the Ultra Vixens, 6 bountiful chicks in search of a cluck.
Oh, she was front and center, literally, in a lot of his movies.
Well, I don't know. Is she alive?
Yes, she is.
She is.
She was in a horror movie about 5-6 years ago, and she did not look like a porn star.
A little weathered out, would you say? I saw her on stage at a place called This So Funny in Los Angeles.
I feel like I should be asking you how much these are worth. I don't know. I barely know her. $150.
$65.
Okay, see?
So she's really weathered out.
I am being generous.
All right. Then there's Christy Canyon. That can't be a real name, is it? Canyon?
Well, I don't know.
Canyon. Was that a metaphor?
I do know who she is. That was, when I was starting to be into my teens, I suppose. I'm going to say she's just a little bit more. I don't think she's going to be more than about $80.
$150.
No, because I disagree. But go ahead.
Okay, he disagrees. Okay.
I'm not going higher than $85 on a Christie.
All right, the most I saw for a signed card, and they do have cards, by the way. This is the freaky part. I don't know who puts these out. Jenna Jameson.
You know who puts these out is the video companies.
Probably.
Yeah.
Vivid?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I didn't check that part out.
I want to do it. We're going to do a little game later in the episode, Aldo. How many VHS porn companies can David name in 30 seconds? Because he'll be
ready, set, go.
I got him down for 60. I think he's going to get 2 a second. Jenna Jameson, she's going to be more in demand.
Yes. And she was an item with the Ortiz.
Tito Ortiz,
right?
Yeah.
We talked about that.
Oh, $200.
Close, $185.
Okay.
That was the most I saw. All right, one more thing, and at least before we move on.
We might start talking about sports.
Well, yeah, but I'm sure we'll come back to this because we always do.
This is insane.
And by the way, you think this is not a serious, financial, industry, which it is, of course, because I got all this information from a CNBC story. So you're talking about big business.
That's just your cover story.
No. I never lie. Well, not too often. All right. The original, because you collect original posters for movies, don't you? Or you collect posters for movies?
Rock and roll posters.
Okay, rock and roll. All right, how much do you think the original poster from Deep Throat is?
Oh, geez, that's got to be $5,000.
Right on target.
Ding, 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 ding.
Right on target.
Give me that bell. I want that bell.
Right on target. Good for you.
It's about damn time.
Yeah, really.
It's the only thing you've ever gotten right that I know of. All right, we'll go back to sports just for a second here, and then I'm sure we'll get back to something more interesting.
porn.
Listen, I've had so many people, and Aldo will attest. Yes, what you're gonna rip me? Go ahead, rip me. Go ahead, rip me.
I'm really glad both my grandmothers aren't here to hear this. Go ahead.
Oh, we'll send the tape, or to whoever who knows you. Lou Brock, unfortunately, Lou Brock and Tom Seaver, both Hall of Famers, they recently passed away. So my question to you, Mr. Expert, is, how did that affect the whole industry? Did all of a sudden people come out of the woodwork with, Lou Brock or Tom Seaver memorabilia? And is it worth more all of a sudden when somebody passes away?
I think the price will climb accordingly going forward. But, you have to remember that there was probably, let's just throw a number out. This number doesn't mean anything official, but if there was, 500 Lou Brock autographs online and 500 Tom Seaver autographs online, it just meant that the demand shot up immediately. So people, I call them vultures. As soon as somebody dies, they're out there buying the autographs. I had a Lou Brock autograph. Now, Lou's been a good signer over the years. His autograph was never one of the top Hall of Fame pricing. He's always considered like a second or third tier Hall of Famer as far as pricing goes. So it was about $25 for an autograph photo I had.
That's all.
And the minute I heard he died, I sat there in my office chair and just went, oh yeah, I'll never get to it in time for it to change the price, because somebody's already bought it who heard about it and went online and immediately. And I was right. It was gone. Same thing with Tom Seaver. I had a couple of Tom Seaver pieces, and they sold literally the day he died.
Okay, so why? Why? It's morbid in a way, but why?
It is. Like I said, I call them vultures because they're going to jump on it when the price is being controlled. Like, Seaver's alive, okay? And you say, whatever the price you've got on an autograph is, $75. That's because he's not dead. As morbid as that sounds. And as soon as he dies, boom, they're grabbing it at that pre-price, hoping it goes up. That's what it is.
But does it go up?
It does. Some of them do. Some hover, maybe 15% over. Some will double. I think Seaver's stuff is going to see more of an increase than Brock.
Okay. Now, we've talked about this numerous times. Not only do you sell sports memorabilia, but you're a sports fan. That's pretty safe to say. And actually, better mark this down, because I'm actually going to send him a compliment here right now.
Wait a minute. Hang on. Let me get prepared for it. And go.
Drum roll. You actually do know your sports. And we talked.
That was it?
What do you think this is going to be, like Sally Field at the Oscars?
And I can't deny the fact that you like me right now.
Talk about Lou Brock and Tom Seaver. Lou Brock was actually an underrated Hall of Famer in my estimation. Lou Brock, of course, once upon a time set the record for a career and single-season stolen base record. That's what he's basically known for. But he was a 3,000-plus hit career. He was a really, really good ball player.
He got his 3,000th hit off a Chicago Cubs pitcher. Can you name the pitcher?
Was it Dennis Lamb?
It was Dennis Lamb.
What do I get? What do I get?
You get to keep doing this show with me, pal.
Oh, shit. I should have gotten it wrong.
So, Brock was unique. Brock was unique because his game was stealing 60, 70 bases a year, but, he was also a 280 hitter for most of his career. Wasn't considered a great defensive player, but who cares when the guy's, scoring 100 runs a year. It didn't really translate into
championships.
Here's the problem with Brock is he played in the same era as Mays,
the home run hitters,
Clemente, Frank Robinson. So he kind of got overshadowed is what happened to Brock.
But when I think of great, and I do mean great leadoff hitters over all the years, Lou Brock is right up there at the top of the conversation. Ricky Henderson is number one.
I don't know about that, because I would have to have, we'll have a correction at the end of the show. Aldo can look up his on-base percentage. I don't think compared to his batting average it was that great, but he let off because when he did get a base hit, he basically had a triple.
He struck out a lot of times also, if I remember, for a guy who's at the top of the order, who was supposed to make contact. But we'll look it up.
We had talked before the show about another guy who batted a little lower in the order, but Ricky Henderson is considered the greatest leadoff man of all time, and I'm not going to argue that at all. But you got Joe Morgan, another one who took 125 walks and stole 60, 70 bases. So if those two batted 1-2, Lou Brock would be your number 8 hitter.
I mean, there's been some, yeah, you're right, and maybe in certain lineups that's what he would be. Listen, nowadays they almost have at the number 9, especially if we're talking about with the DH now in baseball, which it will be going forward forever now.
Stop that.
It will be, sorry, I know you're old-fashioned.
I don't want to hear that talk.
That's the way it's going to be, sorry. But, sometimes you have a secondary leadoff hitter now in the 9th position. There's been some great, I'm trying to think of, Tim Raines was a 3-hitter for the most part, but he was also a leadoff hitter at a lot of other stages in his career. Juan Pierre was an underrated leadoff hitter.
Oh, he had 200 hits, I think, 2 or 3 times in his career.
Juan Pierre played for both the Cubs and the White Sox.
Yeah, you don't have to get 100 walks if you're getting 200 hits.
Sure. I mean, the idea is to get on base, period.
The idea of the leadoff man wasn't with every team, I don't think. And I think Ricky was the first quintessential leadoff man. They're like, oh, he hits with a little power, he can run, he walks, he hits 300. But in the late 60s and early 70s, who the leadoff guy was for the Cubs? It was Don Kessinger, who was a 270 hitter who walked 38 times. That was your leadoff guy. Why? Because he was the shortstop. I don't know. I don't know what the reason for that was.
Well, he was also the only guy on those teams who could be a leadoff hitter. What else were you going to do it? It wasn't going to be Beckert.
Why not? He had a higher batting average, and he didn't strike out.
But he also had contrtle of the bat a little bit better. He was a number 2 hitter.
He was a definite number 2 hitter. Yeah, the Cubs probably didn't have a great leadoff man for a long time. Yep. A long time. Maybe Bob Dernier in '84.
They still don't.
Yeah,
they do not. I mean, the Chris Bryant experiment was a bad experiment. And what I think they have. I don't want to say ruin him because he's still young, but I think they've altered his career path by having him in the leadoff hitter. I think it's been a big mistake.
He probably won't be here next year. I have very mixed feelings about it because I love that young core when they put it together. Baez,
it's going to change.
Rizzo, Bryant. Oh, big time.
There's going to be major changes. Boy, are we getting away from the subject that we normally do on this show, which is porn. I mean sports memorabilia.
I saw you. I'm looking over at David's sheet, and he has Tom Seaver crossed out and porn written in.
Well, Seika's in much bigger letters than Tom Seaver. Speaking of Tom Seaver, I mean, what are your thoughts on him?
To a certain point. Now, remember, I'm a kid when Seaver's in the meat of his career, or actually maybe tailing off towards the end. But up until a certain point, past that, when I started to really understand the game and be able to pick the players out, and I didn't think there was a better pitcher in baseball than Seaver at that time. Him and Steve Carlton. I thought, who came after them that would have been the next guy?
There was a lot of players, including people of my ilk, my age, whatever, who patterned, how you pitched off a mound by Tom Seaver, because Tom Seaver had those really thick legs.
Yeah, like Earl. He was like Earl Campbell on the mound.
Yes, exactly. And all his power and his velocity came from his legs, and his extension. I mean, he would get really low when he would follow through towards home plate. And Tom Seaver actually was one of the the White Sox, and I've talked about this numerous times, the White Sox had a lot of players come to their team at the end of their career. So we talked about this, George Foster and Steve Carlton and Manny Ramirez and
Roberto Alomar.
Almost the White Sox basically took every old Indian player and ultimately brought them over to the White Sox when they were finished. But Tom Seaver actually still had gas in his tank when he came over to the White Sox, and of course won his 300th game in a White Sox uniform.
I remember when that happened, because that was when you could select a guy off somebody else's roster if they weren't protected, and they went and grabbed him from the Mets, and the Mets were like, what? And it was I think he won 16 games for him that next year, and they were trying to repeat from '83. It didn't work out, but it was a great move. And here's the other thing about Seaver, though. You talk about his place in the memorabilia industry, and he is more in demand and a better seller also for the 2 reasons that he played for New York and Chicago. There are bigger markets there, more people interested than Lou Brock, who played in St. Louis.
All good points. So Tom Seaver on the memorabilia market, is he a big-time seller or what?
He always is at a really, really good market. Now it's obviously going to be a little bit better for people selling, but I think he just keeps his demand. I don't think he'll ever, be up in the pricing of a Mickey Mantle or Joe DiMaggio, but for his era, a very solid guy. I think he'll eventually move up to maybe just under guys like Aaron.
Okay, so second tier, as you like to call it. Okay, all right. Before we get to Steve Grad, we'll take a break here in just a second. I wanted to let you know that, did you see this, by the way? Isaiah Thomas was reunited with his 84 All-Star Trophy MVP from the All-Star game. Okay? Apparently what happened, and I'm sort of curious what something like this would be worth, apparently he gave it Gene Pingatore, who was a famous coach who unfortunately passed away, I think, recently, from St. Joe's. And they had some kind of night for him recently. They brought a lot of the artifacts, and Isaiah Thomas was the best player who ever played at St. Joe's. Pingatore had some great players, but he was the best player. And Isaiah brought his 84 All-Star MVP trophy, and they put it in the trophy case at St. Joe's, I guess.
I thought maybe you just left it behind. Like, hey, did you grab the trophy?
Oh, I left it on the table.
Well, we'll call him tomorrow. Have him hold on to it.
It was stolen, okay? And it showed up at an auction sometime later on. And whoever, I guess, won it in the auction, I guess, got a hold of Thomas, or somehow they got a hold of Thomas, and it was returned to Isaiah Thomas. So when something like that is stolen, and it happens, as you well know, does that make it worth more or less? And what do you think that trophy would have been worth on the open market?
All-Star game, several $1,000s, but I don't think it makes it more valuable. The fact it was stolen makes it more in, the news, lights people up to know that kind of stuff is available for purchase if you watch the auctions. Not saying stolen, just saying that people do that. Players eventually do sell their trophies, their rings, if they don't want to hang on to them.
Because you always hear, if some famous Picassos were stolen or something like that. Now, first of all, you got to find a quote-unquote fence. I always wondered, why did they come up with the word fence? I've never understood that. But they have to get it to a fence. Aldo will look that up, of course.
Because I want to know now.
I have no idea.
I'm going to take that to a fence.
Yeah.
Wait, is that a person? No, it's a fence. I'm just going to leave it there, and then
it's the drop-off
by
point.
The playground.
So they have to take it to a fence who, it's a legal person who, somehow turns it into money. Does that not happen in the memorabilia? I mean, if something is...
absolutely. I mean, and like you said, and then it'll turn up on some auction.
Right.
Or it'll turn up just through internal contacts, I know a guy who might be interested in
that.
Yeah.
All right, through the grapevine. Now, if someone came in, if you knew something was stolen, okay, I don't know, this would be very rare, of course. If you knew that something was stolen and they came into the store and you recognize that this is a stolen piece of property, what would you do?
Honestly, I'd probably, pay them by check, make sure they pop their ID out.
And then you call the cops?
And then I'd call the bank
and you
call
cash
the
the check, of course.
They get them before they cash the check. But that's what I would do, especially if it was something that's listen. We in the industry, guys trade emails and messages and literally say, "Hey, I had someone steal something from me. So if it walks in your store, please let me know." And I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I helped catch a thief at a show because they came into my store weeks before and tried to scam me.
Wow.
And they actually stole a couple pieces. They did the old distract and grab. I spotted it. I called the police. I had the guy was stupid enough to call me and ask me if I, wanted to buy something. And that's when I came in. Is that how they distracted me while his girlfriend went in the case and grabbed a couple of things.
Really?
So the cops actually called him and basically said, if you don't bring that back here right now, you're going to be in for it. And they did, and I would have thought something like that, they would have learned their lesson because they were afraid of being arrested. And then a few months later at a show, somebody said, I think those are the same people. They nailed a Michael Jordan rookie off somebody. And I said, yep, and I know who they are, and we got the information out there and helped them get the card back. But yeah, I mean, there's people who will help each other in the industry. Not everybody's cutthroat.
That's interesting. So when you're in the store, I mean, do you have to have your eyes going in all different directions? I mean,
you want to keep your eyes on people. There's certain people you trust, obviously. But
regulars.
We don't let anybody behind the counters.
Right.
We don't let anybody just roll, and we do have our more expensive items locked up.
Okay. And, of course, AU Sports, once again, is located at 6006 Dempster in Morton Grove. That is west of the Edens.
I just want to point out that he did not even look at his notes this time.
Actually, I did.
Oh, yeah. See, you had me. I was going to pay you a compliment. Now, no.
See,
I'll tell you what. You are on 6 weeks probation now.
Wait a second. You say that you can spot people in the stores or walking around. You couldn't even spot me 3 feet away as I'm looking at my little script here.
You're unpleasant to look at.
Touche. All right. Let's take a break now. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Steve Grad. Again, Steve has got some really interesting stories, I'm sure. And we'll be back right after this.
Hey everyone, I'm Chad Gordon.
And I'm Ryan Lieber. We're the hosts of the Friendly Confines podcast.
Each week we'll bring you the latest Cubs news from the fans' perspective with some of the biggest names in sports.
Joe Buck, welcome to the Friendly Confines with Chad and Ryan.
Yeah, oh my God, I'm happy to do it.
Pat Hughes, welcome to the 7th inning.
Happy to be here, Chad.
It is Len Casper.
You got it, Ryan. Chad, happy to be with you guys.
The Hawk, Andre Dawson.
What a small, distinct pleasure. I'm doing fine, thank you.
We're also excited to bring you new episodes as part of the Barroom Network.
So if you're a Cubs fan or even just a baseball fan,
be sure to check out the Friendly Confines podcast every week on the Barroom Network.
Player agent Mike McCartney on a recent Gabriel and Schuster Talk Bears.
I could see the Bears trying to sign 1 or 2 players early in the season. You know, the smart teams are not going to want to lose their best players. So I would think the Bears in particular are going to be really aggressive with a couple of them, including the receiver. You know, the closer you get to free agency, the easier it is to say no to a deal so you can go see what's out there.
Gabriel and Schuster Talk Bears every week on the Barroom Network.
And welcome back to the podcast. I'm David Schuster. He, of course, is Scott Beatty. And right now, Scott, we're joined by a very special guest and a good friend of both of ours. And I've known Steve Grad for quite a while in a lot of different capacities. And I will say this, Steve has actually helped me on more than one occasion break a story. So he's been one of my deep throat sources, if you will. And you can...
Wait, deep throat?
We always...
Are you sure? You want to go that direction?
We always throw porn. Believe me, if you've listened to our podcast, Steve, you know that porn comes up very quickly on almost every podcast we ever do.
Anybody who knows you knows porn comes up.
It comes up in a lot of ways. Anyway, you can follow Steve on Twitter at Steve_Grad. And Steve, of course, works for Beckett Authentication Services and is one of the best in the country, Scott.
One of? Just say the.
He is the.
Put the capital THE on him.
Okay. Hey, Steve, first of all, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, thanks, David. I appreciate it, man. We go back a long time.
We do.
That. An insane amount of years. It's crazy.
Yeah. In other words, we're both getting old. Anyway, this is a sports memorabilia podcast. Although we definitely delve into a lot of different things, as you'll well see here in just a couple of minutes. But
we're lucky if we talk about sports memorabilia at all. Really,
it's really almost like an afterthought, to be honest with you. But why don't you tell the listeners how you've gotten into this field? Because honestly, you I don't want to use the word stumbled into it, but you were a big autograph hound person yourself once upon a time, and you used that expertise of doing this to graduate into, quite a lucrative profession that you've been in over the years.
Yeah, what's really crazy is that I started going to card shows about 80, 81 range. And I always had a passion for collecting and stuff. And then I did autographs and started getting in person and going to the ballparks. But, you get bored with that. Then I started going to team hotels and getting celebrities and music and politicians and all kinds of stuff. And then also at the same time, I had this great passion to work as a broadcaster, radio, TV, and in I use this story because it helped me jumpstart kind of my career. This was about 1990, 91, and 90. And I had some stuff happen in high school, got derailed because I had thyroid problems and Graves' disease. I got held back because I couldn't finish. But I'd gone to college. Finally, I was going to go to Kankakee Community College. David, you know this name, and Scott, you might too. Niles Nyman, who played for the White Sox briefly, I think back in the 70s, was the head baseball coach there at the time.
There was two Nymans. There was two Nymans who played in the majors, Niles and his brother Chris.
Yeah, Chris did. And Chris Nyman, I think Chris caught the final out in Tom Seaver's 300 win, but that was 85. But his brother preceded him. He was the head coach there. He said, "Why don't you come out?" My friends got me got him to invite me. He said, "Play fall baseball. We'll see how it goes. You should make the team for the spring." I said, "Okay, great." Well, 3 weeks in, I get cut. So I get cut. That stinks. So I'm like, well, I'm getting out of here. I remember going back and working for my dad in the south suburbs. And at the time, I was good friends with Tom Paciorek and John Rooney. And John said, "Hey, come to a game with me." And I wanted to be a broadcaster. So I sat in a booth with John. This is back in 90, I think. And John kind of just kickstarted me and got me going and said, "You need to get to school and get your career going." So I finally got that going and went to Roosevelt. Then I went to Columbia, and that's where all the radio stuff started. And I started in this career where I actually met David. And,
I'm sorry.
It was a wonderful career. So I had kind of this really neat career where, and I look back, the Last Dance kind of made me remember a lot of stuff because I was there for a lot of the Jordan stuff. But I started the Jordan stuff as an autograph chaser, getting him at the multiplex, getting his autograph at various Bulls functions, at season ticket holder stuff. My mom and dad were season ticket holders in the 80s. Between that and my media access, I saw Jordan play probably, 300 something times through the years in person. And, it was really interesting to me because I had this whole evolution of like getting Jordan's autograph and then covering him. And the first event I covered Jordan at was at I don't know, David, you might have been at this. This is years ago. This was on Michigan Avenue. Wheaties held an event with Peyton, Jordan, Chris Evert, I think Bruce Jenner was there, a bunch of former box covers. They were doing this commemorative thing. And I was interviewing Jordan and sitting there, and I went to go ask him something, and he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, this is my new thing now." And he just shook his head at me. And I actually had asked him to sign the box while I was there when we were done, and he did it for me. But it kind of segued me into the next career, which was radio, television work. And also, I was still collecting autographs during that whole time, too. So it was kind of a very fun period for me. But obviously, all good things come to an end. And the radio career came to an end. And, I started relying more heavily on the authentication stuff and working in authentication, which I got started at PSA in 2002, left there and formed Beckett Authentication in 2016. So going strong now.
Well, I will say this. It was a good thing you got out of radio because then you finally started making some real money.
I remember how hard it was, and I remember I was at Shadow Traffic. I actually spent like a week or two working with you at Sports Phone, and I was looking for any kind of extra work and jobs, and I was also selling autographs to make extra money because I didn't make much money. I was working split shifts. I was doing Mancow's show at time. I was working weekends at AM 1000. It was a crazy time, but I still didn't make any money. It's just a very poor paying profession unless you're Howard Stern.
And we should point out to any listeners outside the Chicagoland area, this is all local Chicago stuff we're talking about. And Mancow, I know he's gone national since, but he started here, I don't know how many years ago. He's, if you don't know, what they call a shock jock. But in my opinion, not a good one.
Obviously, being with the show was kind of caustic. It was kind of, we made up a lot of stuff. He always said, "Don't let people behind the curtain." And you're right, he was a shock jock. And I'll tell you, years later, which was more gratifying to me, was helping out Keith Van Horn, former Bear player, who had a lawsuit against Mancow for being slandered. He ended up winning. I ended up doing a deposition, and my depot ended up helping Keith win that case. So it was a fun time. I learned a lot, but it was also a really bad time. So I was glad to get out of it.
Yeah, and again, you've graduated to much bigger and better things. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But I'm going to tell one story here, and I've thanked you in the past, and I'll continue to thank you. You helped me the day we found out that Ozzie Guillen was leaving the White Sox, and I'm going to tell this story that you had you had a friend, I guess an agent, who had a player on the White Sox in the clubhouse when Ozzie was telling his whole team that he was leaving to take the job down in Florida. And somehow or another, that player talked to the agent, and you talked to the agent, and you called me, and I was up in the press box that day. Nobody else knew that story, but you gave me through your connections, you gave me the story in advance.
Wait a minute. He's to blame for your continued existence in the media?
That's right.
Can you hang up?
And if it wasn't for you,
story at that time.
If it wasn't for you, then I wouldn't have met Beatty here. So I should probably blame you now for this instead.
Let's just blame Ozzie Guillen for everything.
No, I mean, and the point of the story is that you had connections through your current role, and you've met so many people. I mean, we could do like an hour on just all the people, not only in sports, but people in celebrities, if you will, Hollywood people that you have met over the years.
I've been really lucky about all this, and about being able to work in this industry. And actually, I've given David a bunch of information on other things I've found out, because through my industry, I work closely with guys where you sit with someone for 3 or 4 hours and they start to open up about stuff or start talking about things they're working on or future plans, or, maybe it was Johnny Manziel or whoever the nonsense was. I mean, there was a lot of weird stuff going around that I always had the opportunity to be around, which I still do to this day because I'm very active in the industry, and I stay very active, and authenticating, traveling, being around people. So, I've been fortunate in that regard. I still go back to all my early years and the autograph chasing, and then working in the media, and I built great contacts and still have friends that all work throughout the industry. So, and I know there's not a lot anymore, right, David, that still work?
Yeah, times have changed.
They're still pretty active from back in the day.
Absolutely.
Steve, I want to ask you now. We've talked on the previous shows. We've brought up COVID on almost every show because it's pertinent to a lot of the information. And I know you guys down at Beckett, and you're not doing any like traveling for authentication right now. How is the cancellation of all these card shows that you would normally go to? How has it affected business, and how has it affected you personally?
Well, okay, so we started traveling, I'd say, in May. We started doing more stuff in May. And we're doing a lot of card shops and appearances, someone like, Bergie or whatever, just different places, but across the country. We're doing more of that. We're getting out and kind of witnessing events, too, because while there's not shows going on, all these athletes still want money, and celebrities. And we've probably, since March, we've witnessed 400 or 500 signings, minimally, maybe even more. It'd be hard to put into words, but Beckett just had its best month in August. It surpassed anything we did ever at PSA in 1 month. And it's a staggering number without shows, without the national, without all the stuff going on. I can't believe it. The industry, as you guys have seen, if you follow it, it's strong as ever, with baseball cards selling for almost $4 million. So the industry is really strong. And the collectors during this whole time have had this like renewed passion, and people are spending money like crazy. It's unlike anything I've seen.
That was my initial reaction to it, is that I know business got better on all facets of the sports memorabilia business, almost across the board. So what kind of increase were you guys seeing from like previous year just because of this? I think more and more people were sending more things in, showing up to more authentication services.
I will tell you this much. There's some companies that aren't traveling right now. There's some that are. The shows, not having shows hasn't affected us that much. The thing that we found out, which is pretty obvious, is that the less you go to shows, the more profit you make, because the shows take up, let's say we go do a MegaCon in Orlando, and there's a 4-people staff, and that's a comic book show, but it's one of the biggest in the country. We end up spending just about $8,000 to $10,000 just to do the show. So we're watching our profits actually increase. We're still getting the same volume of work, actually doing much more work, and business is much better than it was with shows. So I don't know if we actually need them to survive, which we thought we did. That was always our motto. We have to be at 2 to 6 shows a month, and we have to be out there and get all the staff. We really don't. We do a bunch of on-site authentications. Like I'll be in Vegas this weekend at the pawn shop at Gold and Silver Pond. We've got guys doing this huge Midwest trip. We do that about every 2 months, and the business is all there. We just don't need the shows, that much anymore.
Hey, Steve, I'm going to preface this next question by saying I'm very ignorant about this, but all right, I teed it up on the fairway for Beatty.
You really did.
All right, shut up.
I'm John up. Daly right now.
No, seriously. God, am I serious? No, seriously. How do you honestly authenticate something? I mean, if I came in with a Roberto Clemente, which was his day yesterday, autograph, how would you honestly know that's his autograph as opposed to somebody from down the street just scribbling something?
Well, I mean, in most cases, Clemente is pretty easy to tell. First, Clemente had a great evolution of a signature from about 54, all the way up until, I'd say, the late 60s. He altered it a little bit, changed it. In the late 60s, though, kind of thrown into the mix was he had like a guy that was his personal valet. His name was Phil Dorsey. Phil Dorsey died in like 2003. His kids got all this stuff and threw it in the marketplace. The thing was, is Phil Dorsey for about 3 or 4 years was signing almost all of Clemente's correspondence, all of his mail. So he had all that mixed into the marketplace. For me, it's really easy to determine a signature. He had this beautiful flowing signature that would almost siphon at the end on each side. He liked to stack it, meaning Roberto would be over Clemente. And he did certain things in his autograph that were pretty easy for me to differentiate, where his clubhouse guy, Phil Dorsey, signed a lot different. He made it kind of look like him, but it wasn't Clemente's signature. And also the bad forgeries. So let's just say Auction House out east, which there's one that sells a lot of bad stuff. They sell probably 10 Roberto Clementes a month. They're just all very easy to tell. It's hard to age ink. It's hard to sign baseballs and make them look old. Guy died in 1972. It's hard to age that type of ink and make it look new. So Clemente's actually a really easy one. He is forged, but he's an easy guy to determine. I think the more challenging ones are Bryce Harper, Mike Trout, Tom Brady, all the new type of players, Mahomes, stuff like that. Those guys are very difficult with their autographs because most of the stuff these days is all Sharpie type scribble. Back in the 70s, 60s, 50s, it was a little different. The players actually cared about their autographs. There was very rare you would ever come across a player that would sign sloppy. It's so rare.
All right, so bottom line,
yeah.
What I was going to get to, bottom line is you have to do your own research and you have to have your own encyclopedia memory about the different things that all these players or celebrities over the years to be able to authenticate it. It's not like you can just take a look at it and say, no. You have done your own research over the years to know if it's real or not. I guess that's the best way of putting it.
And I haven't. I chased autographs all those years, which really made a big difference. Yeah. That's a huge thing. And then also all the studying I've done, and I've been in this industry my whole life. I'm 50. I've been in it my entire life doing this stuff. I have a huge archive of signatures, stuff that is real, stuff that is authentic that I could go check on. I have a staff of guys that I work with that say, hey, who signed this? Today I was doing some baseballs from a customer, and there's a bunch of younger guys, so I'll send that stuff off to the guys on our staff that specialize in that. So it kind of helps. We have a staff of guys that I work with, and I've also worked with consultants through the years, and I also help people too. I want to lead people in the right direction and not watch people get stuck with fakes, by the way, which there are a disgusting amount of in the marketplace because the forgers are able to survive out there and make money. They do it on low profit margins, but they make a lot of money off unsuspecting people. Scott, you've seen it for years, all the bad stuff that's in the marketplace. I don't have to tell you.
Yeah,
it's out there.
I always tell customers, if you see a price on a certain autograph, and we're talking about the top-end guys, Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan, if you see it at a price that's too good, it's probably too good for a reason. These are not, I always tell people, any of these guys, just get them authenticated. Let you guys take it over. Don't buy anything that doesn't have proper authentication. But I want to
be really careful.
I want to go back, and he's right about the old autographs. I mean, you could bring in old stuff. When people bring me old baseballs, and you look at them, you can tell right away who they are. I mean, obviously, you've got your major guys you can recognize right away. But there is the guys today, it's literally, I have said probably 30% of the time when somebody's brought balls in me, sometimes I'll pick it up and I'll actually ask, who is it? Because you can't tell anymore. I'll tell you a really terrible autograph is the current Cubs catcher, Wilson Contreras. It is basically a series of circles. But that's just it. You can't tell these players' signatures anymore, so you need somebody like Steve and his staff to get on it and tell you what you got.
Well, go look at Eloy Jimenez's autograph.
Yeah, that's not good either.
And both of them, Eloy is an E and a line. That's it. That's all you get. And he's been like that for years, too, since he was in the minor leagues. So this stuff is hard to authenticate, but I will say the older stuff is a challenge, too, and the celebrity stuff we get, because there's always somebody out there looking to make a buck. There was a big forger that was just busted up in Michigan in July, and he's been running scams in the industry probably for the last 25 or 30 years, but he would have never got caught if he was forging artwork, expensive artwork, and the stuff started going for $200,000-$300,000, and the stuff was fake. The feds kind of got interested then, and then they busted his ring. But they found the guy, and I talked to a reporter yesterday in Detroit, and they'd been taking stuff out of his garbage for months without him knowing, and he was doing all kinds of stuff. He had used ink and all kinds of stuff they found in there, and used paints. They were tracking him what he was buying online, and it's very interesting when you catch these guys and find out what kind of stuff they've been up to. People like this exist every day. If you think you're going to be buying and knowing what you're doing, just be careful. That's all I have to say to you, because there's been forgery rings busted in Chicago. There's been forgery rings busted in California. This guy in Detroit, they're all over the place. They do it constantly. This is a constant thing that's never going to end. So stay on top of it, buy with authentication, and buy from people you trust too. That's a big deal too.
Let's just pretend I've seen 500 Michael Jordan autographs walk into my store. I swear to you, 490 of them are bad. What do you guys find on stuff that gets turned in on Jordan? Because I think he's the most forged signature of all time.
He's up there with Mantle. Yeah. I'd say that him and Mantle. I'd say this much. There was a guy in the Bulls clubhouse locker room that was featured on Last Dance. He had been running bad Jordans out of there for years, going back to before the Bulls won a championship. He was pushing bad Jordans out of there. The amount of bad Jordan stuff out there, I'd say in the marketplace right now, tough question, because they're faking the upper deck cards, the ones that came out in the 90s, 2000s. They're faking those with stickers and hollows and everything. They do those in Japan, and the autographs in China. They've been faking those for years. You've got all those out there, all the Operation Bullpen stuff out there, and now you have all these avid forgers just kicking out this crap that's out there. I'd say on Jordan, the stuff we get probably at the office runs about 80% fake.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Steve, because we always talk about collections. Sure. Obviously, who's in your collection, and who would you not give up at this juncture?
I still have all my old Jordan stuff that I got back in the 80s, which is crazy. I have almost all of it. Posters, and we used to get them at the multiplex in Deerfield, and that was just like, the fun thing was, it's just like going to the gym. You just pull your car up, and there's Jordan. He pulls up in his Corvette, and or comes out in his Corvette, and he signs. He was great.
You don't charge yourself for authentication, do you?
No, I don't. But I don't really have much authenticated, though. I work for two really big companies, and I have very little that's authenticated actually in my own collection. So I've kind of not done that through the years. I have a gigantic Star Wars collection, Indiana Jones. I have music, celebrities. I've met every big band probably that's come along in the last 30 or 40 years, or a big celebrity. So I have all that type of stuff, and that's the stuff that I really enjoy collecting. Harrison Ford, Star Wars, Indiana Jones. I'm trying to think. I like certain TV shows, and obviously I love music autographs, the albums and stuff like that, but I've dwindled it all down through the years, and God, I've sold a lot of stuff. And there's stuff I wish I had kept, but for the most part, I'm pretty happy I've sold most of it.
You know what, Steve?
It's fun.
I'm sorry. We had Ryan Dempster on our last show, and we asked him. He's obviously a player, or was a player once upon a time, and players go around and they ask for autographs from other guys, whether for charities or for their kids or who knows what. He said there was only one time that he actually had a hard time from a fellow player, and I don't think you'll be surprised by this. It was Ricky Henderson, and I'm just curious, because I saw you numerous times over all those years standing outside waiting to get some autographs, and this is before you became big in the industry that you are right now. Yeah. Who's the one guy that said no to you or gave you a hard time, or maybe there was more than one?
Well, during the baseball years in the 80s, there were some really tough guys. George Bell was really hard when he was with the Blue Jays. Ricky Henderson was really tough. George Brett was probably one of the most vile human beings I've probably ever seen in my life. Treat people terribly. Was not a nice guy. Bo Jackson was up on that list. There was a lot of guys back in those days that were just not nice people. Another Cub pitcher, Randy Myers, really wackadoodle guy. You know, he rode that bike to the ballpark all the time with the flag on it and the basket. He was a weird guy about signing, not a very nice person at all. You know, you just are going to encounter people that aren't going to be nice people. It happens with celebrities too, where they're just not nice people. Jimmy Page, for the most part, isn't really a nice guy. Eric Clapton isn't really a nice guy. They've had it through the years. They're kind of worn out. They're burnt out a little bit on it, and that goes for the baseball players too. But I think, you know, the funny one I always found was Bo Jackson. First time I saw him was 1988 spring training in Bradenton, Florida, and they were there to play the Pirates, and he gets off the bus, and, you know, back then the buses just pulled up on the street, and the players got out. And I remember asking Bo Jackson to sign, and he said, if you don't move away from me, I'm going to put my elbow through your mouth. So that was my introduction to Bo Jackson that day. And that's how, you know, some of those guys are. They just weren't nice guys. You know, years ago, I was very close with Tom Paciorek, John Rooney, all those guys. So they'd bring me in the ballpark before the gates opened, the players. Then I wouldn't have to deal with the other autographed people outside. I would wait in the ballpark and watch players walk in and have them sign. But George Brett, I remember one day I'm in there and this little kid's in there and he goes up to George Brett with a baseball card and a pen. Just a little kid. Couldn't have been 10 years old. Brett took the card, walked with it, took the pen, threw them both up in the air at the same time and laughed at the little kid. That was George Brett. He did that stuff all the time. True story.
Yeah, well, that's the definition of a prick, and that's what he was or is, I guess, you know?
He was. Yeah, he is, and he still is. He was never a nice guy. He still is to this day not a nice guy. Mike Piazza, when he played, was awful. I don't know if there was a worse guy than Piazza when he played, but post-retirement, Piazza is the greatest guy in the world. Talk to you, chat with you, take a picture, ask you how you're doing. But when he played, he was an all different guy. And it's just fascinating to me to see how these guys change and they alter their attitudes, you know. And a lot of times now we have money involved for signing. So things change drastically.
Sure. How about the other side of the spectrum? Who were some of the guys that were just, you know, always friendly and nice, you know, in dealing with this? Because after a while, it can be a pain in the ass for these guys.
Tony Gwynn was, it can be. You're right about that. Tony Gwynn was always probably one of the nicest guys that I ever met in my life. I mean, there was rarely a time where Tony Gwynn wouldn't go out of his way. Greg Maddux was always a good guy. Chipper Jones. These are, you know, this is stuff going back many years where guys were nicer. You know, Cal Ripken was nice back in the 80s. I remember the 90s before, you know, when he was doing this big for his games, you know, and he'd sign, he'd walk down the line at the ballparks. I mean, but he had two images too. He had this image of that where he wanted to portray to fans, but then behind the scenes, he wasn't really that nice of a guy. He stayed at a different hotel than all of his teammates for years. He didn't want to be bothered with all that stuff. You know, Derek Jeter was nice when he played. There was just certain players who got it and certain players who didn't. And I think Mike Trout gets it now. I mean, before COVID, he'd pick a time every day right before the game and he'd go sign for fans because he knew he had to do that. But there's players who just don't care, and it's not in their kind of DNA. I mean, if I told you that Bo Diaz and Ozzie Virgil were awful players about signing, they were just not nice people, and that just happens. You know, there's more of a list. There's a long list of guys that go in that, but there's also the Jeff Bagwells and Craig Biggios of the world who are very nice guys, and Ryan Sandbergs and people like that that would go out of their way to accommodate fans and requests. But you're right, David, it gets to be too much. I mean, you know, they get hounded at the hotel. They come to the ballpark. They're in the clubhouse. They got the clubhouse guys asking them for stuff. They go out in the field. The fans are yelling at them. They get back after the game. People are asking them. Then the next day it all starts again. So I think it gets to be a little too much for these guys, and I kind of can understand their point of view. But, you know, guys like Tony Gwynn, he never let it bother him. Nicest guy in the world. Really nice guy.
We'll go back to the authentication. You've been doing it for a really long time. So I've been curious this whole time, what is the absolute strangest thing you ever authenticated? Not the most expensive, the strangest.
Well, I think the strangest are always the masks. You know, like the people get these masks signed. They're just so weird. You know, like, you know, you've got Freddy Krueger and all this different things, and people get like the Freddy Krueger hand, and it's just all kinds of weird stuff like that. You know, busts, maquettes. I find all that kind of strange. And I mean, that kind of seems to be what people get autographed a lot. It's very strange stuff. You know, I mean, I'm used to baseballs and footballs and jerseys and, you know, photographs and stuff like that. But the stuff that people find to get signed, it's really weird. I mean, I saw a guy that was posting on Facebook the other day, that had a banana that he got signed 3 years ago by the actor who played Anthony Daniels, or C-3PO, Anthony Daniels, in Star Wars. So the guy kept it for 3 years. So very strange people. That's a pretty weird item.
This is a
banana sign.
This is a true story. My brother went to, I don't know where it was, but Ernie Hudson, who was the fourth Ghostbuster, said something in the movie about Twinkies. My brother got him to sign a box of Twinkies.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me the individual Twinkie. That would be tough.
Well, I was going to say, it reminded me because of the banana. So I would think that would be that. We could put that up there with the banana, except for the banana's probably no good anymore. Darn it.
Hey, Steve, I got to ask you this, and talking about strange things to sign, that sometimes at concerts or something, some women might come up to like a rock star and pull down their shirt or something like that and sign my breast. Anybody ever ask you to authenticate one of those?
Well, it would be hard to do, but so you've seen this though before. Is people do get their arm signed? Someone one day had Bruce Springsteen sign his arm outside New York at the play, and then the next day came back with a tattooed on them. So people do stuff like that. I have seen women get their other parts signed, but that was like during probably a Mancow appearance, so which you could probably understand. That was many years ago.
That was actually one of the good things about working at Mancow is that you actually had some people come in there and model for you guys.
Yeah, there was some crazy stuff that went on back in those days. I tell you this much, I'm kind of glad I'm over it now. It was
of course
fun to be part of that when I was 25 years old, and I'm glad it's gone now. So
of course.
Very thankful. I'm glad it's gone.
Let's go to the other end of the authentication spectrum, and I do want to know also what is the most expensive, because we talked about this a couple weeks ago, Schuster and I, about the most expensive autographs, period. So what's the most expensive autograph that's come across your desk?
Well, I did the rules of baseball, but it wasn't really signed. It was the handwriting of the guy who did it. And I want to say it sold for $3.4 million or something in that range,
Pennies.
Right? Ballpark.
Pennies.
And it was basically the initial rules of baseball that were they were sold. I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. SCP Auctions in Dana Point sold it. The guy who owned it bought it out of like a manuscript sale, like 25 years prior, and just threw it in a bin, and he paid nothing for it. $5,000, $6,000. He ends up figuring out what he has and saying, "Oh yeah, I should get rid of this." He ended up selling it, went for $3.4 million. But I mean, it's basically all the rules of baseball. The initial rules, how the diamond is, and walks and strikes and all that stuff, foul poles, and you name it, it's all there. So that would be the most expensive. But I've also done, Ruth balls that have sold for $500,000 and all that type of stuff too. I've been lucky enough to be able to authenticate literally every top end piece in the business. I've had a chance to authenticate it. So it's quite an honor, to be honest with you.
And yet, an autographed Mike Trout card went for more money than the original rules of baseball. What is wrong with people?
I don't know. $3.9 million. It kind of makes no sense to me. But I'll be honest with you, it's really weird how things work sometimes, and it's very, very interesting. I think that card is kind of like that insert type card, and those things have just been going for crazy money. The LeBron James sold for, I want to say, $1.8 million, which was a record at the time, and that was like a month and a half ago. And there's other $1 million cards now. It's crazy. Usually that was reserved for Honus Wagner and Mickey Mantle. Now it's all these newer cards because we have an influx of money coming from overseas, mostly Asia, and they're putting money into this stuff and pumping these card prices up. So it's very interesting to see how that's worked.
I see it every single day. These people paying money for these cards and these box breaks they do online, and people paying thousands of dollars for a guy who's played 45 games in the pros, and I'm in the business, and I'm deep into the business, and I still don't understand it. We should also point out, though, as far as cards go, we should also point out that Beckett also does card grading as well as authentication.
They do. They do.
Right, and all the big cards lately have been in Beckett holders, which is really nice. The Mike Trout, the LeBron James, all that stuff has been in the Beckett holder. So it's really nice to see that stuff happening. It's very exciting, actually. I get a kick out of it. I think it's crazy.
Hey, Steve, this has been a gas to catch up with you on this. I look forward to seeing you because Chicago, they always say you can take the guy out of Chicago, but you can't take Chicago out of the guy. So we look forward to...
Yeah, I'm still really rude. I I mostly learned that from you. Okay?
Well, thank you. I'm glad I rubbed off in some capacity.
He's awful, isn't he? He's just awful.
Yeah, him and I can't figure out who's worse. You or Les Grobstein.
Well, no. Yeah, but it's funny that you mentioned that. But I will always be neater than him. In so many ways.
Oh, my God.
And we look forward to when you come
Thanks,
back to
Dave.
Chicago, and Beatty has already promised that he will pay for lunch.
What?
Yes. See,
Wow.
he just said it right there. It's on record.
Arby's doesn't count.
We're not, wait. We are not recording this show, are we?
Yes. Oh, start over again.
In the meantime, stay safe.
Yeah, stay safe and stay cool. I know where you are. The temperature is a little warm out there.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care. And we'll be back right
Talk to you
after
soon.
this.
All right.
Hey everybody, it's Aldo, and make sure you subscribe to the Bears Barroom Radio Network. That way you won't miss any of the shows, including all of the Mike North Advantage shows. Over the last few weeks, he's had on as guests Mike Ditka.
I like Mitch Trubisky. I think he's one hell of a football player.
Jim McMahon.
I would have loved to play with Mike Ditka. He was a hell of a football player, great tight end, but he called plays like a tight end.
Joe Theismann.
Look at the Bears. I hope Mitchell Trubisky has a year like he had in 2018.
And Hawk Harrelson.
Hawk Harrelson. How are you, Hawk? All right, big guy. What are we going to argue about today? Nothing.
It's the Mike North Advantage every week here on the Barroom Network.
And welcome back to the podcast. I'm David Schuster. He is the owner and operator, the proprietor of AU Sports, located at 6006 West Dempster, Morton Grove. Mr. Scott Beatty.
You are terrible at this.
That's why I'm no longer working in radio.
By the way, can we address my? Now I believe we're on our fourth show, and the last.
Are they renewing us for another season?
The last two guests, Steve Grad, of course, from Pawn Stars and Beckett Authentication, and Ryan Dempster, former Cubs All-Star. I brought both of those guests on board, and so I feel like I should now be able to be known as Mr. Podcast.
Well, gee whiz! Congratulations! We'll put that on your business card.
Just please, can we do that?
Wait, so like Tom Selleck and Mr. Baseball, you're Mr. Podcast?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gee whiz! We'll put that on your tombstone.
Mr. Entertainment, Mr. Podcast, it all works.
Oh, you're like Don Rickles. You're Mr. Warmth.
Yeah, I love everybody.
Did you ever see Don Rickles, by the way?
I actually did.
I did too. At the old Drury Lane Theater in the Round.
About 1948?
Something like that.
I saw him about...
with Tom Dreesen, he opened up for him.
Maybe a decade ago.
Oh, I used to go down in the locker room, with the Dodgers. In the old days, Tommy would say, Don, the best one. He said, go out to the mound and take the picture out on Appreciation Day. It's true. And I put on the uniform. So I go out to the mound. A big Mexican kid's out there. And I said, give me the ball. He goes, you can't take that out of the game. Who are you? Who are you? And I grabbed the ball. With that, Harry Wendelstedt, who is gone, rest his soul, was a great umpire. He runs out, rips off the mask, and he says, it's Don Rickles. Can you get me 2 tickets to the Dean Martin show?
He's one of the all-timers. What other great comedians have you seen over the years? I told you I saw Eddie Murphy.
Okay, I'll get to the funnest one last. I saw besides going to comedy clubs and seeing guys like Tom Dreesen locally and stuff, I would say the others. I saw Sam Kinison.
Oh, that must have been great.
At the Park West when he was just breaking, because basically he was just on David Letterman at the time.
That must have been great.
And I was a huge Letterman fan, so I saw him, and a local Chicago radio personality, you will remember, David, Jonathan Brandmeier, basically said, I'm going to give away tickets if you can just tell me who Sam Kinison is. Because he hadn't broken. He was just, and I was the caller, and I said, yeah, he's the guy who screams all the time. Boom, we went.
Well, Michael, if you ever think about getting married, if you ever think you've met the right woman, you want to settle down, change your life, will you do me a favor, Mike? Remember this face. Because if you get married, Mike, that's going to be your fucking face every day.
I've seen George Carlin on more than one occasion.
I saw him.
George is actually my absolute favorite. What a brilliant, brilliant guy he is.
The amount of an asshole a person is directly proportional to the distance they are away from you at the time you discover this flaw. Someone on TV is really an asshole. Someone in the car is pretty much of an asshole someone standing right next to you online,
You guys are a real asshole,
the closer they are, the nicer they get, you know.
I saw Cheech and Chong.
Oh, that must have been fun. Were you straight or stoned out of your brains?
I'm not revealing anything. That's for the DVD extras, right? I saw Cheech and Chong doing their routines live, but
Dave's not here.
I think the best one, not necessarily the best, but the one that was the most unusual was I saw Steve Martin.
Oh, that must have been great too.
It was at the either the stadium or the amphitheater. I don't remember which one. So this was probably early '80s.
Hopefully the stadium, the amphitheater.
Yeah, and he played. a stand-up comic. Mm-hmm. Played in front of 14,000 people, and I remember, and this was the white suit, the arrow through the head thing.
That's okay for me. Because I am a wild and crazy.
That was a comedy show, obviously, but it was a rock concert.
Mm-hmm. Well, he also played music.
Yeah, but
Did he not?
that was yeah, but like he would do the thing like play the banjo.
Yeah.
I'm sure you come up there and Grandpa bought a rubber.
Don't leave your day job.
Yeah. But it was a rock concert. They were selling the black T-shirts in the concourse, and everybody was cheering everything he did. It was like seeing Elton John, but a guy was telling jokes instead. So yeah, I've seen a lot of stand-up comedy.
I saw Eddie Murphy. I think I might have told you this somewhere in the past. I saw him. I think it was at the auditorium downtown. And I don't remember too much about the concert. I'm sure it was funny because back in the day, his Saturday Night Live, and then after that days, he was really funny. But there was somebody who was heckling him pretty close to the stage.
Oh man, that's dangerous.
Yeah, it was dangerous, and he shut this guy up pretty quickly by saying, "Shut up, blank, 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 blank." Or if you don't, I'm going to crush you. I'm going to take my wallet out and throw it at you and crush you. And actually, that might have been the funniest line of the whole thing.
Actually, one of the funniest lines I've ever heard a comedian come up with was Ray Romano. And he was doing the bit, and he's like, I'm doing all this work, and, my wife's complaining that I don't spend enough time with the family. So I told her, why don't you just go cry in that big bed of money?
Yeah. All right, let's get back a little bit to sports memorabilia here. Did you see that Barry Bonds, the last home run ball that he hit, the last one, number 762, not the record one, which is 756, number 762, I think it sold like a couple of weeks ago. How much do you think it went for?
$200.
Not too far off, $283,000. That was number 762. Now, the record one, 756. How much?
$7.9 million. I don't know.
No. Were you being sarcastic or being real? I don't know.
I say $7.9 million. You can't tell the difference anymore.
I don't know with you.
Aldo, he's going feeble. Who can we get to fill in?
Not me.
How much?
The record
shut
breaker.
him up?
No, the record breaker. I don't know, because I'm trying to base my price on on the McGuire ball. 1.4.
No, surprisingly, $752,000.
My original guess was going to be under $1 million, but I gave it some cushion.
But Steve was talking to us earlier in the podcast. He doesn't understand why people spend the money that they do, like on a card. But this is an investment.
Well, is it? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
We talked about this last week.
Well, we talked about, especially buying rookie era stuff. It could or could not pay off in the long run. But, anybody who's spending $800,000 on a baseball has $800,000. And at that point, sometimes, I don't know, is it just burning a hole in your pocket? I don't understand
I have holes in my pocket, but it's not because I have too much money.
Stuff like
I got holes in the shirt here right now. It's because I don't have any clothes.
I'm such an old school guy when it comes to baseball, though. That's the kind of stuff I like to see in the Hall of Fame.
You know what's interesting? Have you ever been to Cooperstown?
Maybe the ball will be in the Hall of Fame before Barry Bonds will be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I was going to say, have you ever been to Cooperstown?
Yes, I have.
Okay. You know who I saw? I was at Cooperstown for one of the inductions a few years back, I think, when Maddox and Frank Thomas went in together. Pete Rose was down the street selling stuff, of course.
Yep.
And actually, Bruce Levine and I did a nice interview with him at one of the places that he was doing his autograph session.
They only charged you $45 too.
He actually didn't charge us anything. He was really nice to us, but that's besides the point. But what I was going to say is Pete Rose can't get into the Hall of Fame, yet there's more Pete Rose artifacts and memorabilia in the Hall of Fame than anybody.
Let's listen. Stop being offended by everything, people.
Get him in the damn Hall of Fame.
Listen, this isn't the person Hall of Fame. Because, look, I think we talked about this. Maybe it was probably off mic or something. You know, Babe Ruth was a womanizer and a drunk. Ty Cobb was just a SOB. Jimmy Fox was an alcoholic. I mean, you're talking about great, great players. Didn't keep them out of the Hall of Fame. Of course, the reporters at the time, they kept everything down low. Mickey Mantle. Another one. The guy is revered as one of the top 3 or 4 players in baseball, especially in the memorabilia business. Especially Mickey Mantle's a god. He was another one. Was not doing right. So listen, did Pete Rose bet on baseball? Sure he did. Did he bet against his team? No.
Well, we don't know for fact.
We can get into that whole discussion. You argue about Pete Rose, or
I think he should be in the Hall of Fame,
or Roger Clemens, or Barry Bonds. Listen, I am a let them all in guy. Let them all in, because you're going to tell me if you've got a kid who's learning about baseball now, and then he learns the history of baseball. Because I've got kids who come into the store, and they'll be looking at a certain card, and they'll say, "Oh, do you have any Stan Musial?" I'm like, "What do you know about Stan Musial?" And Dad has taught them, or so on and so forth. So in 20 years, these kids, they're not going to be able to know about Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Manny Ramirez, Sammy Sosa. I think that's wrong. It's the Hall of Fame. It's not the Hall of I did something wrong.
Well, I've always said Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. No ifs, ands, or buts, because he's a Hall of Fame player, and I know one myself.
And Sammy Sosa gets an awful deal. I will always defend Sammy. Sammy Sosa was the most popular player in baseball from between 1998 and 2001.
He had that famous boombox of which we could not stand because it was always going so freaking loud, and it was finally busted up at,
No, we didn't say he was a great person.
No, okay, so, and I don't know if Kerry Wood for sure did it, but we always thought that Kerry Wood busted up that boom box. Is that boom box worth money?
Well, it doesn't work anymore.
I don't know. Does it make a difference? It was Sammy's boom box.
It's not like we just plug a couple batteries in it and play as
Did you see that Barry Larkin is selling his World Series MVP trophy from 1990? Now, this is sort of sad in a way when you hear of players who are selling their own stuff, their World Series trophies, their MVPs, their rings, whatever, because probably they need the money, obviously.
It's possible, especially, you're going back to 1990. The salaries didn't go nuts until a couple of years afterwards. There was that whole run that it was like Ricky Henderson, and then Ryan Sandberg got more than him, and somebody got more than him.
Well, the modern players are always going to get more than the older players, just the way it is.
But I wouldn't say, unless the story says he's selling it for financial reasons.
It did say.
Okay, right. So,
but you think that's probably the reason.
He might just be like, look, what am I going to do? I can't take it with me. Let me sell it now and give it to my kids.
Okay.
Could be, but it is sad when you see that stuff, and I know that in the past there have been players who have had to sell their stuff,
sure,
for financial reasons. That's unfortunate.
All right, we're going to end with this. Vin Scully, one of the all-timers, maybe the all-timer broadcaster.
Second best Vin of all time.
Second best? Vin Diesel?
There you go.
Vin Diesel.
Vin Diesel played.
Oh, on our next podcast, we're going to run down all the bad movies that Vin Diesel has done.
No. Vin Diesel's number one because he was the voice of Groot.
Oh, that's right.
In Guardians of the Galaxy. So Vin Scully, I love baseball, but I love the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay. You know what? We almost let this podcast go without you doing Yoda doing Groot.
I'm not doing Yoda.
Yoda doing Groot. Come on, you're on the spot.
Groot I am.
Aldo and I are laughing. It's not funny at all, but we're laughing our asses off at this.
You gotta see his face when he does it, too.
All right, Vin Scully, 67 years career in broadcasting. It's really freaky. Yeah. He's selling his collection, okay? Almost everything. I don't know. No, actually, I think it is everything. And I will tell you that most of the proceeds, and I saw an interview with him, I guess it's coming up in a couple of weeks. It's being sold online. It was originally going to be sold at the All-Star Game this year. There is no All-Star Game, and so it's being sold online 2 weeks from yesterday. We're recording this on the 10th of September, a Thursday. Is today Thursday? It is Thursday. Okay, I don't even know anymore. Anyway, he's selling his whole collection. The proceeds are basically going to his family. He wants to pass it on, like you just said, with Larkin. He's got 5 kids, 16 grandkids, 3 great-grandkids, and most of the proceeds will go to his family, like I said, with the rest of the money going to his credit to the UCLA neuromuscular research project. So, his heart is absolutely in the right place. And some of the stuff that he's selling, championship rings, there's 5 of them. He's got a lot of presidential autographs. I'm sure a ton of those. Okay, he's selling his golf clubs. Oh my God, Vin, are you really going to sell your golf clubs? Don't do that. He's selling, and I think maybe this might be the most. You told me he's selling the scorecard of his final season, and I've worked with Vin Scully. I did stats for him a couple of times over the years. He's very meticulous, so he would have like from day 1 till the end of the season, everything, that whole scorecard in a book, and that's got to be worth a lot of money in itself.
He just looks like a meticulous guy.
He is. For a long time, he didn't. He had it in his contract that he didn't have to come to Wrigley Field because he did not like Wrigley Field. Did you know that?
No.
Who doesn't like Wrigley Field?
He did not like Wrigley Field.
He probably didn't like the press box.
Well, I don't like the press box either, that's for sure.
There's crap falling on your head, right?
Yes. Yes.
In fact, Wrigley Field was renamed from 1914 when it was the home to the Chicago Whales of the Federal League.
Right.
And of course, Wrigley. And this little known fact, the press box is still there.
Oh, it's still there, and some of the food is left over from 1914 also, trust me.
Those are the original chairs, the original microphones, yeah.
Yeah, but Vin Scully and Ozzie Guillen both never liked Wrigley Field.
Ozzie Guillen doesn't like himself.
No, Ozzie Guillen definitely does like himself.
Yeah. Can you imagine a broadcast with Vin Scully and Ozzie Guillen?
I wouldn't understand.
It would be literally Vin going, I'm sorry, what? When they added, I think it was in like 2006, 7, 8, I don't know, whenever he was in between jobs, and they hired him as like a in-studio analyst for the World Series. I'm like, don't you have to speak English to get that job?
So let me ask you, as we wrap this up, I mean...
don't forget Aldo's audit.
Oh, Aldo's audit, before we even get to that, because I'm sure this is going to take a half hour also. Yes. Are you getting more girls from doing these podcasts? Because I know the groupie podcast groupies. Yes? No? What?
I don't know. Is that like I said, did we set that website up? Podcastgroupies.com? Because
we're working on the logo.
Because, can link my email to that immediately, sir. Waste no time.
All right, Aldo, what do you got?
My profile pic is going to be from 1994.
Of course it will. Just like most dating sites, put up a picture from 25 years ago.
Absolutely. All right, you guys asked me to check on Lou Brock's on-base percentage. It's a 342.
That's not bad.
Not bad.
Which among players who have played at least 500 games, it ranks 846.
Okay, maybe not.
Okay, but
no, it's not bad.
How many players have played 500 games?
Yeah, not too many.
340. Listen, if you have a leadoff hitter nowadays with a 340 on-base percentage, that's more than acceptable.
Yep. Nah, I think. Well, but lately they've been when you got guys at the top of the order. Look, they're probably 375, 380. It's not great, but it's okay.
The word fence has applied to thieves who knowingly buy stolen goods. Well, the origin of that came in the 1700s when thieves...
Oh, you remember that then?
He's talking to David, not me.
That was my ACT score, by the way. Not what year he's talking about.
When thieves who were looking for defense from being caught. Defense. So they use fence as a slang.
Defense.
That's right. You guys,
I think that was stupid, but okay, keep going.
You guys mentioned the name of the movie Deep Throat a number of times. I just wanted to tell our young listeners that is a 1972 American pornographic film that was at the forefront of the golden age of porn.
I just want to tell our younger listeners. Oh, good. You are an good influence.
I told Aldo in advance to look that one up, by the way.
You did. Steve, you guys asked Steve about Strange Place places where people have signed autographs. Well, Ravens quarterback Joe Flacco said he has signed tons of stuff, but the weirdest was a Filet-O-Fish box from McDonald's. And
that is fucking weird.
Yeah, that is weird. Here's a couple more weird ones. There was a movie called The FP in the 1990s, and in the DVD box there was an autographed tampon.
Oh my God.
From the filmmakers, and that's because there is a strange scene in the movie involving a tampon. It's a horror movie.
No, I'm surprised it was on a huge hit.
And the last one about signed autographs here, the Sons of Anarchy star Charlie Hunnam. Is that Charlie Hunnam?
Yeah, I think so.
He was asked to sign a vibrator, which he did, and he scribbled on it, "Have fun." And you asked about Christy Canyon's real name.
Yes.
Christy Canyon, who has been in over 100 adult films. That is her real name.
Oh, my God.
But in some of the movies, she was also billed as Tara White, Sarah Wine, Linda Daniel, and Dee Dee. And finally, I have 2 questions sent in by a couple of listeners.
This is
Wait a minute.
This is Stump the Beatty.
we need like the 20th Century Fox movie music right now. Dun, 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 dun. All right, go ahead.
All right, a woman by the name of Eileen, her last name is Ulick.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch it. Go ahead.
She asks, do collectors root when a superstar dies?
Ooh, root. That's pretty... I would say there's a...
Well, we sort of talked about this.
I'd say there's a section of them that are not displeased.
Yeah.
I don't know if they root for someone to die, because if you root for someone to die, you're a pretty sick bastard.
All right, and then a woman, this has to be a fake name, Lucy Bowles.
Wait.
Wait a second. Are you sure that wasn't Christy Canyon's other name?
That was only for...
Lucy Bowles!
No, that was her specialty series. All right.
I wonder if Lucy's into anal sex.
So let's see what Lucy had to ask us.
She listened to a past show where we talked about Art Spangler being in almost every baseball card deck that was purchased in the 60s. She also mentioned that Johnny Callison was a frequent baseball card that her son or somebody would always get in baseball cards. And she wondered what the value of those cards are, despite the fact that they were so prolific in baseball cards.
And really, honestly, that Johnny Callison is considered what we call a common card. Depending on the year, it's going to be based on what the other common cards are. So it could be from 50 cents up to $8. You know, at least if you're going to pull a guy, at the time he was an all-star. So
Callison was a decent player.
Yeah, he was.
Played on the Phillies.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly the Phillies, and he actually came to the Cubs in 1970 when they were trying to make a run at the division again. He was a good addition to the team, but unfortunately, nothing.
They needed him in '69. They got him a year too late, don't you think?
Oh, they got rid of Adolfo Phillips before that too. Lou Brock could have still been there. Who knows?
And if people want to ask questions of myself, or even more so, Mr. Hollywood Scott Beatty, how can they do that, Aldo?
I'll answer questions about anything, including David's personal life.
Just send a tweet to @BearsBarroom, and we will make sure that it's answered in the next show.
All right, so I guess on our next show, that's exactly what we will do. So, Scott,
yay!
It's been fun.
It's always fun, David.
We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, folks.